So are you going to talk specifically about feeding or anything? Or I had a couple slides in just measuring the tube and that sort of thing, but.
Okay. So that slide right there is when you're doing a feed on any animal, you need to measure the tube to be able to figure out where the stomach is. And the way it's done is by having we'll have the harbor seal pup on this table on a towel. You try to kind of flatten them out a little bit, and depending on the animal, that can be very easy or extremely difficult, and they're all very different. But the idea is that you want to take the tube and hold it from the tip of the nose to the end of the flipper, of the side flipper, and all the way to the end. And we have a rubber band on the tube, and you put that at the point that you want it to stop at the mouth. Does that make sense? And that's your measurement, and you do that every time that you're feeding an animal, so that you know, in the past we've had, I thought maybe because the rubber band was here that meant it was already measured. You measure it every time.
And the reason for that is if the tube isn't down far enough, it's not into the stomach, then you're infusing their whole feeding of milk into their esophagus. There's a much greater chance of regurgitation and aspiration, and then pneumonia, which is probably going to be a pup that's not going to make it. So, and it's you'll never be asked to tube seals until you've done it with somebody who is very adept at it a number of times. So, not to be frightened.
Yeah.
But it's a great thing to be able to tell your friends, oh, I tube feed harbor seals today.
And harbor seals actually, we have to burp them after we tube feed them.
There's a rubber band.
What? Oh yeah, here's the rubber band.
So Jenny, for the new people, when you put the tube in the mouth, you put it to the left, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And seems like I usually kind of position myself on the left side so that when I feed the tube, you don't have to do it that way, but just so when it's feeding through, it kind of feeds to that left side.
I was trying to be a burping picture, but he's turned the wrong way.
Oh.
And the question oftentimes comes up, why don't we bottle feed them? And I would have to say that every center that rehabilitates pups tries to bottle feed because it's so much more natural, and everybody goes, oh God, I wouldn't want a tube down my throat 4 times a day. And it's, we've done it a few times. We've actually even completely raised a few animals, elephant seal, pup, and the harbor seal here and there, but it just doesn't work. Because it's very hard to teach them to nurse effectively. You want to get that whole dose of food into them. The milk that we make is not as rich as mother's milk, so they're not getting the calories, so we need volume, and they'll stop drinking before they would, they'd stop ingesting calories. They would drink the same volume that they might nurse from their mother, but it just, is something that pretty much every rehab center has abandoned the thought, as nice and kind and humane as it seems. So
I think I read somewhere that they estimated to bottle feed a pup would take about 20 minutes per pup. Mm-hmm. And we've had, I guess a couple years ago, I think, didn't we have maybe 9 or so indoors, mm-hmm. Tube feeding, so that's a lot longer than you would want to spend per pup, and just to get that exact amount. And that's kind of the way that we can manage their weight and get their weight gain going, is we start with an exact amount, and then it's bumped up according to their weight. And that, like I said, we can administer that exact amount of feed.
So that's just a pup in the cage in the pup room.
We didn't talk about having to listen into the tube, so that should probably be mentioned.
Yeah, that's definitely equally as important, or maybe more so than that measurement. once you tube the animal, you listen and feel for any air coming back out of the tube. And what you want to hear is maybe, a stomach gurgling sound. You don't want a blast of air coming out, and that's something that you just have to, I think, I don't know how many times I'd say, I'm not sure, what do you think? I'm not sure, and you eventually learn that, and you can do it with a high degree of confidence that you are in the stomach. And hopefully the animal will vocalize, which is a great sign when they actually, make a sound while the tube is in, and then you're there.
And when in doubt, you take the tube out and you start over.
Yeah.
Because we've only occasionally, and we've tubed hundreds and hundreds of animals, over the 20-some year period, and there's been, I think, 2 that I can think of that actually died with lungs full of milk, and you just don't want to be the one to do that. And I mean, it's something that can happen, and that's the biggest concern in tubing, because you're doing a natural thing to an animal. So
is it even possible to get a tube in to the lungs as far down as you measure for the stomach?
no.
But if the tube curls, then
It would have, yeah.
It would be pretty tough because, in the airway, it's a cartilage-lined airway, and once the trachea branches into the bronchi, you're about mid-chest, and so you'd have to really force it to get it down as far as your measurement, which is another good reason to
Going down
measure the
tube,
tube each time.
You should feel like vibrations as it goes over the trachea, because it's got the ridges, basically. So,
Yeah, it'll go much easier if it's in the airway. So, so the tube feeding process, there's a set schedule. First it's kind of like through the night. There's a midnight and a
5 feedings a day.
5
It's
feedings a
8,
day.
12, 4, 8, and midnight.
yeah. So and always the joy is when they're off midnight feeds, and that shift doesn't have to be covered any longer, though for some people that shift works out really well. So and that's something that we want to coordinate with people, as quickly as possible. What shifts are going to work for you? What days of the week are you free and would work for you? And hopefully people are going to fill the spots in the schedule themselves, but then we'll have a roster of who normally can work at what times or fill in when there's not enough people. So
on that sign-up sheet, when it says 8, 12, it doesn't mean you're going to be here necessarily from 8 to 12?
no,
Okay,
no. And depending, if there's one pup here, you might have a 15-minute shift.
okay.
And
Sometimes you're here for the whole shift.
Yeah.
As you're walking out, the next one's in.
Yeah.
when we had those 9 pups, that was
Yeah.
So it could happen?
Oh,
Yeah, for
It,
sure.
Okay.
it could happen. It's not usually until, that's like kind of the May.
That's when we
May
start
and-
a little bit of everything.
Yeah, because we could get some elephant seals in at that time also. And so then you've got your indoor, pups that you're feeding first, and then you move to the outside. And the animals get fed in the order that they are admitted to the hospital. But you always start, with all your, I say that, but you always do all your indoors first, and then you move to the outside, and then but that sort of stuff will be, written on a chart.
It's kind of the reverse order. It's in the order, but in reverse.